D. Mordocs present Wonder Number 21, the complete story of iCarly, how a fake web show predicted the internet. Black silence. Then abrupt opening squeak of a webcam clicking on, the hum of a clunky desktop computer, a broadband connection waking up, and the neon glow of a monitor reflecting off teenage eyes. Look, let us keep it brutally honest right out of the gate. When people reminisce about growing up in the late 90s and 2000s, they love to romanticize Saturday morning cartoons or primetime family sitcoms, but a massive generational consensus points to something entirely different as the ultimate shared television ritual of the digital dawn. It did not happen in a movie theater with overpriced popcorn and sticky floors. It happened in a high school ceilinged Seattle loft, sitting on a worn couch next to a mechanical sculpture of a giant thumb staring at a flat screen television while three teenagers presented the ultimate daydream. They showed us that anyone with a camera, a green screen, and a weird idea could build an audience right out of their living room. For millions of kids growing up across America and far beyond its borders, tuning in to watch Carly Shay, Sam Puckett, and Freddie Benson broadcast to the world was not just watching a sitcom, it was watching a prophetic blueprint unfold in real time. For years, television critics dismissed it as just another fast paced, slime adjacent Nickelodeon comedy, but the real story reveals itself to be a terrifyingly accurate rehearsal for the 21st century creator economy. Long before anyone was calling themselves a content creator, before YouTube was a corporate monolith, before algorithms decided culture, and before ring lights became standard household furniture, three kids in a Seattle loft were sketching out the exact digital ecosystem we live inside of today. And there is always more to the story. Stories have always been among humanity's oldest companions, but the internet changed how ordinary people gathered around them. To understand how iCarly captured a generation, we have to travel back to the mid 2000s, a strange transitional epoch in human communication. We were living in an era where broadband was rapidly expanding in households, though dial-up was still a lingering memory. YouTube had just been founded in 2005, stepping onto the scene as a chaotic digital frontier. It was a wild expanse of grainy home videos, dancing babies, and random clips uploaded by pioneers who had ideas, but they were unleashing had no idea what they were unleashing to civilization, but people were just figuring out what webcams were supposed to do. Websites were static, video streams was still finding its footing. The idea that a couple of kids could turn a bedroom hobby into a global broadcast network sounded like science fiction. Television was still firmly in the hands of the gatekeepers. If you wanted to be seen, you needed a studio lot, a network executive, a casting director, and a multi-million dollar production budget. The boundary between the people who make the media and the people who consume media was absolute. Until a hitmaker looked at the shifting tides of youth culture and realized that the wall was about to crumble. Kids were not just watching television anymore. They were staring at computer screens, filming themselves, submitting weird talents, and trying to figure out how to make their voices heard in a crowded digital wilderness. Television needed to catch up. It needed to reflect a world where anyone could press record. And out of that realization came a premise so simple it felt revolutionary. What if three ordinary kids started their own web show? What if the talent show was not something you waited in line for at an auditorium, but something you uploaded for the entire planet to judge? What if the backstage of a show was not a studio dressing room, but a teenager's messy bedroom? That was the spark. And the world was never quite the same again. Now let us talk about how this machine was actually built. By the mid 2000s, the creative architects of children's television understood the secret language of the tween audience better than anyone in Hollywood. They knew the rhythms, the comedic timing, the high tolerance for absolute weirdness, and the deep desire for characters who felt like hyper energetic versions of the kids sitting next to them in class. Television was shifting beneath their feet. Children were spending less time passively receiving what networks broadcast and more time interacting with technology. They were visiting early message boards, watching clips online, and experimenting with digital cameras. The original concept for the show was not even about a web show initially. It was conceived as a vehicle for Miranda Cosgrove, who had already won over audiences as the wonderfully chaotic little sister in Drake and Josh. The question was simple: how do you build an entire series around her without boring the audience to tears? The answer came by looking at the changing habits of youth culture. Kids were not just watching television, they were putting on shows in their garages. They were filming skits. They were dreaming of an audience. What if the show placed the power directly in the hands of the characters? What if Carly Shay was not just an actress in a sitcom, but the host of a digital phenomenon? The pitch was clean, high concept, and tailor made for the internet age. A sweet, level headed girl and her rebellious friend, fried chicken loving best friend, I should say, accidentally start a widely popular web show after a school talent show audition goes hilariously off the rails. It was a premise designed to resonate with a generation that felt ignored by traditional adult media. It whispered a seductive promise into the ears of every kid watching. You don't have to wait to grow up to have a voice. You can build your own stage right now. Now, every great show needs a universe, and iCarly gave its audience one of the most iconic living spaces in television history. Forget traditional suburban houses or sterile sitcom apartments. iCarly took place in a sprawling, high-ceiling Seattle loft apartment overlooking the city skyline, shared by Carly and her eccentric older brother turned guardian, Spencer Shay. That loft was a character in its own right. It was a chaotic shrine, an unbridled artistic expression of an early 2000s millennial design through and through. There were random sculptures made of everyday objects, giant thumbs, glowing lamps, and weird metallic art pieces that frequently caught fire or exploded. There was the iconic spiral staircase. There was the kitchen where ridiculous movies were blended and constant comedic chaos unfolded. And most importantly, there was the studio corner, the space where the magic happened, framed by constantly changing digital backgrounds and a green screen that brought viewers straight into whatever bizarre conceptual reality the kids had dreamed up for that week's episode. Living with Spencer meant living in a world where safety regulations were merely suggestions and creativity had absolutely no ceiling. Played with manic physical brilliance by Jerry Trainer, Spencer Shay was the ultimate older brother fantasy. He was an artist who never truly grew up, who supported Carly's ambitions without question, who built giant butter sculptures, fought rival artists, and treated every day like an open canvas for absolute nonsense. The loft represented an ultimate safe haven for childhood autonomy. Parents were notably absent. Their father was an Air Force officer stationed overseas, leaving Spencer in charge. Now, in the universe of iCarly, kids ran the show. Adults were mostly foils or eccentric nuances, and the home was a sanctuary of uninhibited creativity. It was the dream architecture for a generation that wanted more control over their own spaces. And then, of course, there was the show within the show, iCarly. Every episode was punctuated by the signature intro in 5, 4, 3, 2, followed by the energy of the web show credits. iCarly was not just a plot device, it was a masterclass in sketch comedy, audience interaction, and early digital media formats. Think about the way the web show actually was. It was a variety show built for an internet age, long before YouTube creators made channels, branding, and reoccurring segments stand-up practice. Carly and Sam hosted while Freddie managed the technical wizardry behind the camera, switching the camera angles, handling digital feeds, managing chat rooms, and keeping the broadcast from melting down. They did not just talk to the camera, they interacted with the global community of fans who sent in videos, challenged them to weird stunts, and voted on segments. They reviewed bizarre products, they performed surreal comedy sketches. They exposed annoying teachers and schoolyard injustices. They brought on bizarre recurring guests. They tested the limits of what two teenagers could broadcast to millions of viewers from a living room couch. Looking back, the segment on iCarly read like an eerie prediction of viral internet culture. They did random dancing long before flash mobs and TikTok dance challenges dominated public squares. They showcased bizarre human talents and internet oddities long before platforms made the weird side of the internet permanent category of human entertainment. They engaged in epic prank wars, experimented with absurd food combinations, and created catchphrases that instantly migrated from the screen directly to middle school lunchrooms across the country. The show captured the exact kinetic, unpolished lighting and the bottled energy of the early internet video creation era. Now, it is easy to look at iCarly through the cozy lens of nostalgia, but its true genius lies in how accurately it predicted the future of media consumption. When the series premiered in September 2007, YouTube was barely 2 years old. Most people still watch television on cathode rail tubes through traditional cable boxes. High-speed internet was expanding rapidly, and the first iPhone had arrived only months earlier, beginning to change how people carried the internet into everyday life. Yet iCarly understood core truths about the digital landscape that traditional Hollywood executives were still blind to. First, it understood democratization fame, teaching a generation that you don't need a gatekeeper to validate your talent. Second, it understood interactivity, treating media as a dialogue where characters constantly reinforce viewer mail, web comments, and fan submissions. Third, it anticipated the creator economy, dealing head on with internet trolls, corporate sponsorships, copyright issues, and the psychological pressure of maintaining an online persona. When characters like Neville Peppermint and infamous tyrannical child critic running a rival review site entered the picture, the show basically dramatized the early days of blog culture and comment section toxicity. iCarly was not just reflecting pop culture, it was serving as a prophetic simulator for the exact digital ecosystem children reading the history would grow up to inhabit, working, and consume every single day. Now, a high concept premise and a clever digital theme mean nothing if the chemistry on screen does not crackle, and iCarly possessed one of the tightest, most perfectly balanced ensemble cast in the history of youth television. At the center was Miranda Cosgrove as Carly Shay. Carly was the anchor, the straight man, the empathetic voice, and the capable moral compass who kept the ship steady while everyone else around had spun out of glorious madness. Cosgroves played her with an effortless charm and grounded likability that made you root for her instantly. Then you had Jeanette McCurdy as Sam Puckett. Sam was a revelation, a leather jacket wearing, butterscotch wielding, authority defying force of nature whose love for ham and fried chicken was matched only by her terrifying penchant for chaos. Sam represented the idea of the show: fearless, cynical, fiercely loyal, and aggressively funny. Nathan Kress anchored the triangle, and Freddie Benson. Freddie was the quintessential tech geek producer, overprepared, allergic to fun, wrapped in mom and forced safety gear, and hopelessly painfully in love with Carly across the hall. Freddie's suffering was a cornerstone of the show's comedic engine, but his technical brilliance was the literal glue holding the web show together. And trying it all together was Jerry Trainer Spencer Shay, a masterclass in physical comedy who could turn a minor prop gag into 5 minutes of pure cartoon physics. Brilliant. Now, around the them orbited a universe of unforgettable supporting players. Marissa Benson, Freddie's hyperprotective, germophobic mother, whose overbearing presence was a masterclass in comedic anxiety. Gibby Gibson, played by Noah Monk, who evolved from a weird background kid who randomly took off his shirt into a full-fledged comedic icon, whose name became a battle cry across school playgrounds nationwide. And countless guest stars, oddball teachers, bizarre neighbors, and weird fans who populated the Seattle universe, making every episode feel like an unhinged cartoon brought vividly to to life. Now, one of the most fascinating layers of iCarly was how it tackled the psychological reality of internet celebrity before anyone knew what to call an influencer. In the world of the show, achieving web fame came very real, very funny, funny social consequences. And Carly, Sam, and Freddie had to navigate walk-ups at school, autograph requests, that groovy smoothie, and the sudden realization that their private lives were now public property. Episodes frequently explored the darker absurdity comedic side of digital notoriety. They were episodes about cyberbullying, where they had to take down toxic trolls. There were episodes about selling out to corporate sponsors when fancy energy drinks or weird products threatened to compromise the authentic voice of the show. There were storylines about losing control of their own content, dealing with copyright thieves, and figuring out how to balance schoolyard friendships with global digital tech. Now, for the kids watching at home in 2008 or 2010, this was not science fiction. It was an early warning system for the exact social media dynamics they would encounter on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok a decade later. The show taught an unspoken lesson. Building an audience is fun, but keeping your soul, your friendships, and your sanity intact while the numbers go up is the real challenge. Okay, you cannot talk about iCarly without looking at how it anticipated the exact mechanics of modern internet virality. Long before reaction gifs, before viral sound bites, before fandoms clipped moments into endlessly recyclable memes, iCarly understood the internet rewarded repetition. A funny phrase was not just a joke; it became currency, a community, an inside joke shared by millions and millions of strangers. The running gags and catchphrases migrated instantly from the screen directly to middle school lunchrooms and early message boards across the globe. Interesting. Is it a butter sock, pear phone, a pear pad, the show's iconic satirical Apple products featuring the glowing pop pear pad with a bite taken out of the side, an aesthetics touchstone that every viewer instantly recognized. Coupled with soaring high energy pop rock theme tracks and guest appearances ranging from alternative icons like Good Charlotte to One Direction dropping by the Loft, the show created a shared subculture that children from New York to London to Tokyo to Vegas could participate in simultaneously, which was very much cool beans. And what separated a successful American children's sitcom from a global cultural phenomenon, scale and universality. iCarly was translated and broadcast across dozens of countries and languages, beamed into millions of homes worldwide. And its core appeal transcended cultural barriers because the fundamental desires of childhood are, you guessed it, universal. Every kid wants autonomy. Every kid wants an adult in their corner who treats them like an equal, just like Spencer did. Every kid wants a best friend who will ride or die for them through any social disaster, just like Sam. Every kid wants to feel like their voice matters, that their creativity has value, and that even if the world looks confusing, giant, and intimidating, you can always build a community of your own right in your bedroom. The show's fast paced slapstick, high energy physical comedy also played universally across languages. You don't need to speak fluent English language to hear Spencer's head catching up. See Spencer's head catching on fire, or Gibby Cap crashing through a wall. iCarly proved that the language of the internet creativity was truly global. All good things must eventually log off. By 2012, after 6 seasons, 97 episodes, and an incredible impact on youth television, the original run of iCarly came to a close. The final episode, I Goodbye, aired in November 2012 to a massive audience. It was an emotional punctuation mark for a generation. Carly was moving to Italy to live with her father. The web show was ending. The loft was being packed up. Freddie, Sam, Spencer, and Carly had to face the reality that childhood was ending and the digital chapter of their lives was evolving. It was a bittersweet farewell to an era. The set was dismantled, the cameras turned off, the actors grew up, moving on to college, music careers, and new professional chapters. For a few years, iCarly lived on purely in syndication, late night reruns, nostalgic YouTube compilation videos, and the permanent real estate it occupied in the brains of millions of 20 somethings who still judged every smoothie by groovy smoothie standards. It felt like a closed book, a moment to a specific era of cable television that would never return. Now, until the streaming era changed the rules once again. So, fast forward nearly a decade, the kids who watched iCarly sitting on the living room floor in 2008. In 2008, were now adults with credit cards, streaming subscriptions, and an insatiable appetite for nostalgia flavor with adult realities. Paramount Plus took the plunge, greenlighting an iCarly revival in 2021. This was not a soft reboot or a sanitized children's show designed for a new generation. This was iCarly grown up. Carly Shay was now a 20-something navigating the brutal realities of modern influencer culture, dating apps, failed web ventures, and career reinvention. Freddie was a divorced stepfather working in tech. Spencer was still eccentric, still an artist, but living in a modernized, insanely expensive Seattle loft. Noticeably absent was Jeanette McCurdy. Sam, with the revive without her absence, it was addressed organically, okay? Yeah. Now, the characters were lived in a world where actual influencers, algorithms, brand deals, subscriber counts, and internet toxicity were the air everyone breathed. Carly was not a cute kid stumbling into web fame anymore. She was trying to maintain authenticity in a hyper-saturated digital landscape where everyone was trying to monetize their personality. It ran for 3 seasons, offering a rare experience for a generation, watching their childhood comfort show mature right alongside them, tackling adult dating, career anxiety, and changing friendships with the same comedic heart that made the original show very special. When you step back and look at the full arc of iCarly, from a quirky mid-2000s Nickelodeon pitch to a global streaming revival, you realize it accomplished something rare in entertainment history. It did not just entertain a decade of kids, it gave them a vocabulary for the digital future. It told a generation that technology was not just a tool for corporations or adults, but a canvas for human connection, humor, and self-expression. Every time someone sets up a ring light, edits a video in their bedroom, launches a podcast, collaborates with friends, trolls ahead, or builds a community online, they are participating in the exact ecosystem iCarly celebrated. Somewhere, there's probably still an old webcam in a desk drawer, an abandoned YouTube channel with 3 subscribers, a video made with friends after school that was never meant to last, but maybe that was the point, because for one generation, iCarly did not just teach us how to watch the internet, it quietly convinced us that one day we could become part of it. And whether we realized it or not, we did. Headlines fade, culture lasts, and there is always more to the story.